June 6, 1944. The largest invasion in human history begins. Allied ships fill the English Channel from horizon to horizon. Landing craft push toward the shores of Normandy. Above them, bombers and fighters darken the sky. On board the vessels are young men, many barely 20 years old, bracing for the hell that awaits them on the beaches. D-Day was the turning point of World War II, but it was also a bloodbath. Omaha Beach alone became a nightmare of fire and steel, with soldiers gunned down before they could even reach cover. German defenses, fortified in concrete, withstood weeks of bombing and artillery barrages. The Atlantic Wall stood strong. Victory came only through sacrifice. But imagine another version of this story. Imagine that the Allies did not rely on 1940s technology. Imagine instead that as dawn broke over Normandy, they unleashed the firepower of the 21st century. What if modern missiles rained down on D-Day? The very thought is staggering. A modern cruise missile like the American Tomahawk can fly over 1,500 kilometers, hugging the contours of land and sea, nearly invisible to radar. It carries a warhead weighing half a ton and can strike its target with terrifying precision, sometimes within a few meters. In 1944, no weapon could compare. Allied bombers dropped thousands of tons of bombs, but most landed far from their targets. A Tomahawk needs only one strike to achieve what once required 100. Now picture the scene. Before the first landing craft reaches the shore, waves of cruise missiles roar across the channel, skimming above the waves. German soldiers in their bunkers hear a strange sound they cannot understand. There is no time to react. A bunker erupts in fire, then another, then another. The steel doors of artillery casemates are blown inward. Ammunition explodes. The coastal guns, so carefully placed to command the beaches, are silenced in minutes. It does not stop there. Modern missiles are not limited to bunkers. With precision guidance, they could destroy bridges and crossroads far behind the beaches. German reinforcements, racing toward Normandy, would suddenly find their routes cut off. Convoys of trucks and tanks would grind to a halt as the very roads beneath them are shattered. The difference is enormous. Historically, Allied paratroopers were dropped behind enemy lines to sabotage bridges and disrupt communications. Thousands of young men risked their lives to slow the German response. With modern missiles, those missions could be achieved in seconds, without a single soldier leaving the ground. On the beaches themselves, the impact would be even greater. In 1944, Allied soldiers stepped off their landing craft into a storm of machine gun fire. German bunkers positioned high on the cliffs had clear views of the sand below, and their guns cut down men by the dozens. But if modern missiles had struck first, those strongpoints would already be rubble. The machine guns would be gone. The cliffs would stand bare. Instead of wading through carnage, Allied soldiers could advance with far fewer losses. Omaha Beach, the bloodiest sector of the invasion, might have been taken in hours rather than an entire day. The effect on morale would be devastating for the defenders. German troops had been told that their fortifications were unbreakable, that the Atlantic Wall could hold back any invasion. To see it annihilated in minutes by weapons beyond their comprehension would shatter their confidence. Many might surrender on the spot, unwilling to fight against such overwhelming firepower. But to understand the scale of this change, we must compare it to what actually happened. The Allied pre-invasion bombardment lasted for weeks. Thousands of tons of bombs were dropped from the air. Battleships fired their heavy guns at the coast. Yet when the landing began, many bunkers and gun positions were still intact. German machine gunners emerged from the rubble and opened fire. The Allied bombardment had been imprecise, scattered, and often ineffective. Modern missiles would eliminate that weakness. With guidance systems, every major strongpoint could be hit directly. The difference between a near miss and a direct hit is the difference between survival and destruction. In Normandy, that difference would have saved thousands of lives. But what about larger consequences? Could missiles alone decide the fate of D-Day? Consider this. The German counterattack. In 1944, once the invasion was underway, Hitler's armored divisions began moving toward Normandy. The panzer units were feared for their power and speed. At one point, they nearly drove the Allies back into the sea. But in our scenario, those same units would face a new kind of enemy. Modern missiles could strike tanks on the move, convoys hidden in forests, or even headquarters buildings deep inland. Panzer columns would be torn apart before they ever reached the battlefield. Command posts would vanish in fire, leaving officers unable to coordinate their troops. In this alternate reality, the Germans might never have been able to mount a serious counterattack. The Allies could secure the beaches with far less resistance, expand their bridgeheads quickly, and push inland before the enemy even knew what was happening. Yet, there are limits. Modern missiles do not exist in a vacuum. They require guidance, satellites in orbit, GPS signals, digital computers, laser designators. None of these existed in 1944. Without satellites, the missiles could not navigate with modern precision. They might still hit the general area, but not the pinpoint accuracy we expect today. Instead of striking a single bunker, they might obliterate an entire village nearby. Civilian casualties would skyrocket. Entire towns across Normandy could be flattened. Liberation would come, but at a terrible price. And then there is logistics. A D-Day invasion used over 5,000 ships. Could those ships of the 1940s carry and launch thousands of cruise missiles? The technology to fire them simply did not exist. Missiles require specialized launchers, complex electronics, and fuel mixtures far beyond what was available in the 1940s. Without the infrastructure of the modern era, these weapons could not be built, transported, or deployed. So we face a paradox. If modern missiles were somehow placed into Allied hands overnight, delivered from the future, ready to use, then yes, they could change the invasion completely. The Atlantic Wall would crumble. The German army would be shattered. The Allies could establish their foothold in France with far fewer casualties. But without the technology to support them, without satellites, computers, and launch systems, these weapons would be like swords without hilts, powerful, but impossible to wield. Still, the idea forces us to reflect. D-Day was not simply about bravery or numbers. It was about technology. The difference between a precise weapon and a blunt one is measured in lives lost. In 1944, soldiers stormed beaches under fire because their weapons could not do the job for them. In the modern era, missiles can destroy defenses from hundreds of miles away, sparing the lives of those who would otherwise have to fight face to face. If modern missiles had rained down on D-Day, history might have been written in a single day. The cost in blood would have been far smaller. The liberation of Europe might have advanced weeks, perhaps months, ahead of schedule. Germany's collapse could have come sooner. The war itself might have ended earlier. But victory is never simple. Even the most advanced weapons cannot occupy ground, cannot hold a city, cannot persuade a frightened civilian that freedom has arrived. Missiles can destroy, but they cannot build. In the end, soldiers would still have to march across the fields of France, street by street, village by village. So, what if modern missiles rained down on D-Day? The beaches of Normandy would have been transformed. The Atlantic Wall, once the symbol of Nazi strength, would have been reduced to dust. The Allies might have walked ashore rather than bled for every inch of sand. But the larger lesson is clear. Technology changes war, and a single advance in firepower can alter the destiny of nations. Yet this leaves us with another question. If one weapon can change history so drastically, what other battles might have turned on a single technological leap? What if stealth bombers had fought in World War I? What if drones had flown above Stalingrad? What if nuclear weapons had been discovered a decade earlier? The answers could rewrite the past itself.